Okay, it's class number 3. The first one we did the restoration of Israel. Remember that one?
Yeah.
And last week we started into this, which is really Daniel. We're in the book of Daniel. Last week we covered it, chapters 2 and 7, but we're going to go a little more detail, quite a bit more detail tonight, because there's so much in the book of Daniel. There's so much in these chapters, right? We can't skim over it. Now, we have Nebuchadnezzar's dream, his image, and we have analyzed that. It's the 4 kingdoms that were to come, that were going to swallow up Israel and mistreat God's people. And we've seen who they are, right? Babylon, Media, Persia, Rome, and Greece, and Rome. And the last one is Rome. And the first part of it and the end of it is all Rome, according to the prophecies, both prophecies, chapter 2 and chapter 7. And we've concluded that in between Rome, as we know, scattered the Jewish people, burned the city and the temple, and scattered the people. And then, interestingly enough, Rome was scattered. Couple of centuries later, Rome was scattered. Rome is everywhere, you know. Rome is scattered all over the world. You ever go around and look at the Roman buildings everywhere? Look at our system, the whole Western culture is Roman, Greco-Roman culture, isn't it? So Rome was scattered everywhere, east and west, all over the place, right? And that, of course, is where they scattered Israel and God scattered them. But, of course, God scattered Israel too. Right? And, fascinatingly, as God brought Israel back, it looks like Rome reappears. And what we have seen, the time period, essentially from the destruction of the temple, 70 A.D. to 1948, is represented by this blue line down here. All right? Why? Because there was no people, the people were not in the land, and the prophecies regarding the land and the people only come to pass when the people are there. That's common sense. It's a key. It's an important key. It's the second key in the book, one of the 7 keys. Because if we don't get that, then we have to come up with all kinds of scenarios to explain all the different empires that occupied the Holy Land. But with the people not there, it doesn't matter. Now, in 1948, as we have seen, the Brussels Treaty was the beginning of the European Union. And at the same time, the same year, that Israel becomes a nation, once again. Not coincidental. In fact, there's a video, I would recommend you get it, if you can find it, by Hal Lindsey put out years ago. 1948, and what a pivotal year 1948 was. It's unbelievable the amount of things that were discovered, that were invented, that have to do with end times in 1948. The World Council of Churches was established in 1948, which is really the beginning of the whole Harlot system that we're going to talk about tonight. It was a big move in that direction towards gathering them all together. And the World Council of Churches has turned out to be one of the most anti-Israel bodies in the world. Sad to say. They're always saying things against Israel and making resolutions and statements and so on. So there you go. Anyway, so this alliance, iron and clay, the feet of iron and clay, it ends with 10 toes. We've seen that the beast, the last part of the beast at the end has 10 horns. So the number 10 has to, and we've seen what that is, that it's 10 leaders that emerge out of the revived Roman Empire, that give it its clout, that actually, as we have seen, and we'll look at tonight, put it together. All right. All right, I think we got that. It began with the Treaty of Brussels, and then we see that it's now grown into what is the beginnings of the European empire come back to life. And it is heading east. It's spreading east. Remarkable spread in the last 20 years. Remarkable. Just swallowing up the Balkan countries and heading more and more east. So look at these purple ones here. All of these are in line to be part of the EU. And Turkey's the big question mark that has to get sorted, right? But it's going to swallow up the Middle East as well when it's all over. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. Okay. Then we see that the stone cut out of the mountain, we see, is the kingdom of God, right? And it strikes the statue on the feet. Not on the legs, on the feet. And the whole thing comes tumbling down. So that last empire, represented by the beast with the 10 horns, is the revival of Rome. And when that is toppled, it's the kingdom of God emerges, and the whole beast is done away with. Amen. Right? So that's good news. Amen? That's the good stuff. Now, as for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom, 10 kings will arise, and another will arise after them, and he will be different from the previous ones and will subdue 3 kings. Now, we can't get into that right now. We'll talk about that later, but now it's a detour, so we have to stay focused. The reason I try to stay focused is I have to take you from A to B to C in an orderly way, or you lose me. Now, if you're into all this stuff and know it already, you'll be able to take detours. But if you don't, if you're just learning this for the first time, I could really jerk your brain around, and that wouldn't be a good experience. So I'm trying to give it to you in a consecutive way, in sequence, so that you will be able to link the dots together. Then we'll go back and pick up those little details that we need to look at. Okay? So, Rome is revived, and the intent is to destroy Israel again. Rome is revived, and it's going to face down Israel at the end and the Messiah at the end of the age. Now, if you're from Europe, we're not picking on your country. We don't know what role we will play, but in the book of Isaiah, we see that all the nations come against. And in Zechariah, all the nations come against Israel, right? And Isaiah says in Isaiah 63, there was no one to stand with the Lord. There was no one to stand with Israel. So none of us can take a lot of comfort. Now, our country stands with Israel now, but we don't know how long that's going to be. And you see signs that that's changing, can't you? The next group to come along may not do that. In fact, we hear the Democrat Party right now saying that a different message. We don't love Israel. Israel needs to do this, 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 and this. Right? Yeah. All right. So I suggest to you that we are going to be one of those nations also. Everybody likes to think that their country is going to be the good one. Let's face it, the peoples of the earth rebel against God. Amen. That's the bottom line. And there's going to be a remnant from all the nations that love God. Amen? Amen. Okay, so don't be offended if I pick on your nation. Right? Especially when we go after the Brits. The Brits have done great things around the world. We thank God for the British. We wouldn't have the gospel without them. Amen? But then they kind of did some bad things too. This is true of everybody. So, the 10 horns, all of this kingdom, 10 kings will arise, and another will arise after them, right? We read that. And the next one, Revelation 17, says, and the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but they receive authority as kings with the beast for 1 hour. These have one purpose, and they give their power and authority to the beast. And one thing you can clearly see, whether it's an actual hour, there's no reason to assume it's not. But it's an alliance that we can see. It's an alliance. an agreement, an alliance of nations that say 10 of them, that 10 horns that belong to the revived Roman Empire, that say join together to make this decision. And they send the beast to enforce it. Right? The beast, of course, ends up taking over. That we'll see. And the beast becomes the Antichrist. And so the beast is a reference to the kingdom and to the Antichrist. It's both. The beast is the alliance, the revived Roman Empire, but it's also a reference to the man. All right? And we'll see that that's typical. When it talks about kings and kingdoms, Daniel talks about kings and kingdoms. He uses kingdoms, sometimes he uses kings, and it's interchangeable. When it says kings, it means kingdoms. When it says kingdoms, it means king. There's a king. There's always a king. Right? So that's just common sense. All right. So we got some indication of what they are. It's an alliance. Now look, the Western European Union, most people don't know anything about it. Never heard of it. All we heard of was the European Union. But before the European Union, there was the Western European Union. So let's read about it. This is right out of the encyclopedia. The Western European Union, WEU was called, was the international organization of military alliance that succeeded the Western Union, WU, after the 1954 amendment of the 1948 Treaty of Brussels. The WEU implemented the modified Brussels Treaty. During the Cold War, the Western Bloc, including the WEU member states and the United States as part of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, right? At the turn of the 21st century, after the end of the Cold War, WEU tasks and institutions were gradually transferred to the European Union, the EU, providing central parts of the EU's new military component, the European Common Security and Defense Policy. This process was completed in 2009 when a solidarity clause between the member states of the European Union, which was similar but not identical to the WEU's Mutual Defense Clause, I know that sounds a little complicated, but just hang in there, entered into force with the Treaty of Lisbon. The states party everything to do with the EU. It's like bust your brain. It's like it's written in such gobbledygook language, intended to make you feel stupid, but it's really not saying anything that significant. You'll go to the webpage of the EU and read their stuff, and you'll read all these big words and everything. It sounds so complicated, but it's not. It's just gobbledygook. The states party to the modified Treaty of Brussels consequently decided to terminate that treaty on the 31st of March 2010, with all the Western European Union remaining activities to be ceased within 15 months. On the 30th of June 2011, the Western European Union was officially declared defunct. Okay, so what's the point of reading this? Well, look at the number of stars on there. You see how many there are? 10. The number of nations that were member states of the Western European Union grew to 10 and did not go beyond it. So these 10 member states put this whole framework together called the EU, and militarily were in a treaty to protect it and defend it. Are you there? And when the EU was fully complete in their organization and structure as they wanted, and able to take over these parts, right? The military, that's what they were shooting for. Then it went underground. Became defunct means it just, you don't know, but it went underground. But it can emerge at any time, reemerge. And in fact, it has. So you see the number 10, right? All right, it's important to see that. The last year, we had the 10 emerge again, reemerge, with a few little minor changes. But it's essentially the framers of the EU. Italy was missing this time. And another country was added. I think it might have been Poland, maybe? Okay, I'll tell you in a minute. I'll see with the next chart. Actually, now that I mentioned it, the one that was added was Finland. Yes, Finland. Okay? And Italy opted out for now. So those numbers can change. I'm simply illustrating that the numbers can change, but there'll always be 10. 10 nations, 10 kings that have an agenda, come together in alliance as part of Europe. They're the 10 horns that Europe is wearing, that the revived European Union, I should say, is wearing. You follow? And it's there for us to see, but you have to have eyes to see it. Last year, Macron, the French president, Emmanuel Macron, pushed this thing through, this new force, 10-nation army to protect and defend the EU. And it was signed within months. Did you know that? And its goal, its job, its responsibility, I shouldn't say goal, they are signed, pledged to defend Europe and protect its borders militarily. So it's a European army. And many of you know the army, whoever runs that runs the whole thing. Right? Now, and of course it's the same players that are in the political sphere as well as the military one, as far as the EU is concerned. It's run by the politicians. So these are the countries. You see it? 10 of them. Why did they pick 10? I don't know. Other than the prophecy. What other reason? Why 10? You say, well, only 10 volunteered. No, they said, we want 10, that's it. And they shut it down at 10. So it's a sign to us, again, that the 10 emerge whenever. Right? And so it's not hard for us to see 10 nations standing up in Europe and saying, yes, we give authority to this person to do this. And the prophecy is already fulfilled. Okay. So then we saw in chapter 7 the 4 beasts, right? And we did look at how we looked at what they looked like. We looked at what they looked like, yes. The first one was Babylon. It looked like a lion with wings, right? Wings of an eagle. And then we saw the bear was Media-Persia. The leopard was Greece with, the 4 heads and the 4 wings representing the 4 generals who took over after Alexander the Great, right? Then we had the monster that starts with Rome and ends with the revived Rome. That's the part that people have a hard time with. Because they can't, that whole gap of history, what was going on there? There are so many theories out there. There are so many people giving up ideas, and they have Russia as the bear, and they have the U.S., and they have Britain, and they have all these different forces. It has nothing to do with those countries. Are they involved in the whole thing? Yeah, we've seen, but has nothing to do with them. It is the empires that dominated Israel with the people in the land. The nation of Israel, right? And the one that is emerging now will once again dominate Israel. And then we'll see in a moment what happens. It splits. It divides into an eighth. We'll talk about that in a minute. That'll be the empire, if you would, of the Antichrist. That will be the kingdom of the Antichrist. All right. So it's different than all the others, right? They can't even describe what it is. Now, we're going to read Daniel 7. Just because there are other things in there I don't want to leave out. There's some important things in there I don't want to leave out. So I'm just going to read it from verse 23 onwards. Then he said, the 4th beast will be a 4th kingdom on the earth, which will be different from all the other kingdoms, and will devour the whole earth and tread it down and crush it. Now, we can see that Rome did that, right? but that its revived form is going to do the same thing. But it'll be a political alliance, so it's not like iron, it's iron and clay. Right? But we have the ability to crush today like Rome never had. Look at the weapons. Right? Look at what they can do to the earth. So, now, and for the 10 horns, well, out of this kingdom, 10 kings will arise, and another will arise after them, and he will be different from the previous ones and will subdue 3 kings. We saw that already. We're going to come back to that. He will speak out against the Most High and wear down the saints of the Highest One. Now, the saints of the Highest One, immediately Christians assume that's us, Christians. It's not. There's no Christians in the book of Daniel. They didn't exist, right? Now, are Christian saints? Yes, of course they are. We're holy ones, right? But that's not who's being referred to here. Who's being referred to is Israel. They're the saints of the Highest One that are being spoken about. And the Antichrist, of course, wants to destroy them. But he will not succeed. But he will annihilate a lot of them, won't he? And he will intend to make alterations in times and in law, and they will be given into his hand for a time, times, and a half time. A time is a year. Times is 2 years. Half time is half a year. So that's 2.5. 2 plus 1 plus a half is 3.5. That's how we understand it. And there are other verses that tell us it's 42 months, and it gives us clearly that it's 3.5 years. Okay? When you put them together, it's the same message. So this period of this rule of this king is 3.5 years. But then it says, the court will sit for judgment, and his dominion will be taken away, annihilated, and destroyed forever. Then the sovereignty, the dominion, and the greatness of all the kingdoms under the whole heaven will be given to the people of the saints of the Highest One. So Israel will receive the kingdom. Now, of course, we who belong to Christ will rule with the Messiah. Are you okay with that? You can handle that, right? In a different level, obviously. But on the earth, Israel will be the chief nation. Yes. And Jesus said, the disciples asked him, when are you going to restore the kingdom to Israel? And he didn't say, no, I'm not going to do that. He taught them 40 days on doing just that and when it was going to happen. But how it was going to, but he didn't tell them when. All right? So this is Israel. But the good news is this is the kingdom of Messiah that comes at the end of the vision. So the EU will disintegrate into the Antichrist kingdom, and then the Messiah will come and establish his kingdom. Okay? Now, let's go on. That we've got that down. We can go a little further. I'm just going to try to keep putting meat on the bones, but we got to get the concepts down. So we look at the 2 charts here. We see the comparison between what's forming now and the Roman Empire. Now this is happening, guys. I told you I didn't tell you. I told the guys in New York when the whole Brexit thing happened. I didn't say it won't happen, but I said I'm pretty confident it's not going to happen. And if it does happen, it won't make any difference. And guess what? It hasn't happened yet, has it? And it doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon. And when it does happen, it'll be so meaningless that it'll be pretty much the same as the UK being in the EU. There won't be a lot of difference. You do follow that, right? You know what's going on? It's all postponed again until next year. So they keep postponing it until the British people decide they don't want it anymore. They want to be in the EU. That's the goal. They keep putting it off. Very clever. Okay. But in the meantime, they managed to convince the UK that they needed to be part of an EU army, something they were opposed to all those years. So that's what Brexit managed to do, convince them to do something they weren't willing to do before, because they don't want to be left out now. Changes, God changes things, doesn't he? He shakes things up to change. He raises up people to fulfill his purposes. And he takes down other people because they're in the way of his purposes. So God is in control. Amen? But see, this whole area will slowly begin. And this is what this whole Arab Spring was about. And it continues on, the war in Syria. All of it was trying to remake this whole part of the world. The only problem is biblical prophecy got in the way. And Russia came in on the scene, screwed it all up, right? But trust me, it's going to go the way God wants it to go. And the way they has been prophesied that it will go. All right. I should qualify that to say God doesn't want these bad things to happen. So we may not make that clear. But they're prophesied to happen because these are the choices that men make. Right? But God uses the bad choices of men to fulfill his purpose. So in that sense, it's already been determined. But it doesn't mean God wants all this killing and bloodshed and all that. That's our choice. People do that. Does that make sense? But God is way ahead of us and knows what we're going to do. Because he knows the end from the beginning, so he works it all out after his plan. Amen? Some of the symbols of the EU, that's what I'm looking at now. The earlier ones here, look at what do we have? The woman on the bull, Europa. And by the way, the bull is the beast. The bull represents Zeus. Did you know that? And Zeus brought Europa to Crete, and this is the whole legend. It's Greek mythology. That's why we're Greek. We look like the Greek kingdom. Are you there? So Crete is where he dropped her, and the bull represents Taurus. Zeus. He changed himself into a bull. That became the symbol for Europa. Is this goddess who is descended from Zeus, who's on the riding Zeus. It's a pagan symbolism, right? But so happens it fits the book of Revelation because they got a woman riding on the beast. Isn't it amazing how that works? Okay, and then look at this. These are the coins from the European Union. They don't have these out now, but they were in the beginning. This was a German paper that had in the early days. I don't know what the date is on that, but it's real. And look at the coin. The woman's riding on the bull, right? Look at the building. This is the Parliament building, I believe. I think it's in Strasbourg. You would know probably better than me. But it's in Strasbourg, I believe. There's two of them. There's the Commission also, right? In Brussels, right. So there's Brussels to Strasbourg. And this building is built after the Tower of Babel. It was designed intentionally to represent the unfinished Tower of Babel. Did you know that? Look at it. That's the whole point of it. And this is the drawing they were working with. You'll see the stars that eventually changed shape, but that's what they were working with originally. This drawing is part of it. And it says, Europe, many tongues, one voice. Whereas Babel was one tongue, divided, everybody was divided. The goal is to bring mankind back together with one voice. It's to undo Babel. So see, Babylon comes right into the picture here. Right? I think that statue is outside of the Parliament building. There's a couple of them, so I'm not totally, I haven't seen them, so I look at them in pictures, but they're there. This is the symbolism throughout the EU. All right. Let's go now to Revelation 13. We're going to take Revelation 13 and Revelation 17 and put them together with Daniel chapter 2 and 7. Okay? Because it's all the same thing. Except in Revelation, we're given more detail on how it's going to happen. So the beast, right? chapter 13, I saw a beast coming up out of the sea, having 10 horns and 7 heads, and on his horns were 10 diadems, and on his heads were blasphemous names. And the beast which I saw was like the leopard, and his feet were like those of a bear, and his mouth were like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his throne and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as if it had been slain, remember that, and his fatal wound was healed. So now that seems to indicate that the person who is the beast will die and come back to life, which is probably going to happen. Okay? Talk more about that later. But it also means, and more definitely means, the empire that disappeared has come back to life. Rome. And we see, when we look at the 7 heads, we'll see how that fits, all right? But notice it's like the characteristics of it are from all the other empires, which is very fascinating. Now, we did look at this last week, so some of this is recap, but it's no harm to go over this because we really got to get this down. This is key. If you get all this together, a lot of Scripture is going to start to click with you, especially the book of Revelation. Okay, revived Roman Empire, right? It's like a leopard. We have that Greek, the whole belly is like a leopard. That's really Western culture, right? There's books out written on this. You can find books that talk about how we're a Greek culture, our whole system. Democracy started with the Greeks. And our whole educational system that we're going into, and all of it is Greek thinking. We don't, but our system lifts up the Greek philosophers, and they were great teachers and so on. And the feet, we talked about Media Persia. Its system, the feet are what propels it forward. And that whole Media Persia was known for its compromise, for its, all-inclusiveness. They was able to blend the cultures together, and they didn't have to give up their different brand of culture. They just had to be in allegiance to the Persian Empire. But they were very lenient. They let the Jews go back, build your temple. See, God used all that, right? And he let all the cultures have their own gods and everything. It was unity and diversity, putting it all together, right? That's Media Persia, and that's Europe. That's the EU. That's the whole way of moving forward. The mouth, like the mouth of a lion, is Babylon. The mouth is Babylon. That's very interesting. And what comes out of the mouth? Blasphemy. Blasphemy, right? What's blasphemy? There was given to him a mouth speaking arrogant words and blasphemies. An authority to act for 42 months was given to him. And he opened his mouth in blasphemies against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, that is, those who dwell in heaven. Sometimes we think blasphemy is like cursing. It's not. Well, that is too, but it's not. That's not really what it's about. Blasphemy means to slander what is good. So to call good evil and evil good, that's blasphemy. That's the epitome of what blasphemy is. And that's what we see today. Everything is flipped around, and what we know is good and of God is now considered evil. And what is evil, for those of us who love God, is now considered good and progressive and good for humanity.
Like in Congress.
Absolutely. Okay, so look at that. Isn't that fascinating? And so this is the lion's roar. This is what's coming out of the beast. The mouth is all of the pagan stuff from Babylon. The humanism, all of the worship of, blending all the religions, putting it all together for the good of man. But it's all blasphemy against God. And even goes to the part where the Antichrist will try to change times and epochs and things. So it's times, we don't know what exactly. Maybe he'll change the way we do the calendar, or most likely change everything. Well, we won't be there for that. Amen? Amen. We'll talk about that later. If you're planning on sticking around for that, you can enter into that. But he's going to change everything. And what are they doing right now? They're changing all of the natural order.
Yeah. That's right.
Everything that God intended and made, they're turning it around and flipping it on its ear. So that's all part of the blasphemy. All right, so there we see the whole thing, and one of its heads will come back to the head that was slain. Right now, we're going to go on. Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth. This is Revelation 13, verse 11. And he had two horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. And he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence. And he makes the earth and those who dwell. Notice he makes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose fatal wound was healed. He performs great signs, so that he even makes fire come down out of heaven to the earth in the presence of men. So this second beast is a religious figure. He has two horns like a lamb, but he speaks like the devil. He looks like a sheep, he speaks like the devil. Yeah. Now, who fits that category? And he's, as we'll see in a moment, he's connected with Rome. But what you don't see is that he's going to do all these signs. All right? Now, that may shock some people, and it certainly, if anyone's watching this and that's your tradition, they'll be shocked. But we have lots to back this up. Lots. All right, so let's go on with this. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth because of the signs which was given him to perform in the presence of the beast, telling them who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who had the wound of the sword and has come to life. So that seems to again indicate that the person will actually, the leader of this beast system will also die. And when he comes back to life, he will be the man of law. He will be the Antichrist. He will be revealed as the Antichrist, what we call the Antichrist. He's a man of sin, man of perdition, man of lawlessness, because Satan has entered into him. He's a completely different person. Yeah. Just like when Satan entered Judas of Iscariot and he went out. This is the other person who's got the same prophetic statement. He's the man of lawlessness. Judas was the son of perdition. It's the same thing. Right? This is marked out for this individual. Okay. It was given him to give breath to the image of the beast. We're going to have to come back to all this. We'll be weaving this all together, and we'll be putting it all together for the next 6 months probably. I don't know how long. So we'll look at every aspect of eschatology. By the time we're done, there'll be, I assume, nothing we haven't talked about. Amen? All right. And he causes all the great and the small and the great, and the rich and the poor, and the free man and the slaves, that's everybody, to be given a mark on their right hand or on their forehead, and he provides that no one will be able to buy or sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who is understanding calculate the number of the beast, for the number is that of a man, and his number is 666. Well, what we can learn from this right off the bat is that it has to do with economics, and it has to do with worshiping the beast. Okay? So this mark is not any old mark. Now, we see the technology for such a mark today, a chip or some whatever, RFID chip, I think they call them, that they're now implanting into people's arms, and that have all your information on it, and you just go like that, and they got everything on you When you buy and sell, you won't be using your credit card, you'll be using that.
Yeah.
See? Now, it'll get more sophisticated, I'm sure. But it really doesn't matter. The two things that we need to know, because when the credit card came out, there were lots of, I remember that. So a lot of you don't remember that. But I remember when the credit card came out. And we had the barcodes. A lot of people, and barcodes, by the way, operate on 666. I don't know if you know that. They do. That's kind of a background. I'm not a technical guy, so I don't know too much about that. But John can probably tell you. But the 666 is at the core of the barcode. Right? But there were people writing books that was the mark of the beast, and if you had a credit card. So, and that's not true, of course. Right? We all have credit cards. But if having that, whatever this mark is, if you have to take, if you're planning on being here for the tribulation, you need to hear this message. It has to do with bowing down, coming under the authority of this person. Okay? And it has to do with economics, buying and selling. So that's kind of easy to see how that could be initiated, isn't it? All right. As far as the actual number, we could speculate on that all night. I think the truth is we really don't know. And when it comes out, we'll know. Yeah. And if it may not come out until near the time. Yeah. And then people will know. But we know what it's about, so it's not going to be hard to discern. Right? Okay. So we have the political beast with the 7 heads and 10 horns, and we have the religious beast. Okay? And the religious beast sits on top of the political beast, and they're headquartered in Rome. Now, we'll show you that in a minute. It's clear in Revelation 17. All right, let's go there. I've covered all that. So look at... let's look at this first. We see the Antichrist will represent the political system, right? Or this personage who becomes the Antichrist. He'll start off as the leader of the EU, most likely. He'll be a representative of the EU. He could be the president, or he could be the high representative for Europe. Did you know that that's what their foreign ministers call the high representative? Pretty strong name. But anyway, that person will be given authority. So it really doesn't matter. Okay? And so for the first 3.5 years, they will broker the peace treaty, all that, and that person will be in charge, and it will be given that authority. And then the big change takes place, and he usurps the authority, becomes the Antichrist. All right. Then we have the religious system represented by the false prophet. Okay? Now, I can say to you with absolute certainty that not this current pope, I don't know if he's going to live long enough. He's certainly setting the stage. We can show you that. We can prove that to you. But that office is the office of the false prophet. Don't go around saying Pope is the Antichrist. He's not. But that office was created for this role. There's nothing biblical or Christian about that office. If you study it, and if you go there and you check it out, you'll know it's built right on top of the Roman Empire. It is the Roman Empire, revived in a religious way. The Pontifex Maximus was in fact the title of Caesar. And he was the chief priest of the Roman priesthood before Christianity. Did you know that? And that was his title, Pontifex Maximus. And the Pope simply took the same title. And if you go to Rome, you go to the Vatican, you see it all everywhere. Okay? And then if you look, there's a whole lot of other reasons which we don't have, well, we could take time, but we don't need to. We'll give you the highlights, all right? So I can assure you, and what do we see? He's doing it. Pope Francis calls for a new system of global government to tackle climate change. A new system of global government. Now, notice who's calling for it. The religious leader. She's setting the stage. The religious leader is the one who's going to lift up the beast. The religious leader is the one who's going to set the stage and going to demand that everybody take the mark and all the rest of it. Do you ever think of it that way? And he's the one who's going to call down fire and all the rest of it. Much more coming on that. So stay tuned. All right. Even charisma sees it. 12 times Pope Francis has openly promoted a one-world religion or a new world order. Now, this is not new. All the popes have always done it for a long time. But it's particularly new with this man. He's determined to bring it about. Yeah. I think he's too old, frankly. Yeah. He's like 78 or 80 years old?
Unless we're that close.
Unless we're that close. Agreed. But he could also live a little longer. We don't know. Yeah. He seems to be hanging in there pretty good. Yeah, he does. Anyway, the next thing is some of the latest things he's been doing. Pope Francis leading Imam signing covenant, pushing us toward one world religion. This is pretty recent. It was in Abu Dhabi, right? So people don't know these things are happening. He's issued a call for a meeting, a global conference coming up next May the 14th. And it's to basically bring world leaders and all kinds of leaders together to bring unity for the New World Order. Pretty amazing stuff. But it just so happens that the person in that office is doing this. Coincidental? No, hardly. You see that the whole unity and diversity is the whole thing. And he's even trying to bring the evangelicals and everybody on board. And many of them, sadly, are going to join up and go with him. I hear a rumor that some of the ones who went originally have changed their minds. I hope that's true. They're beginning to see the real Francis. I hope that's true. Then it says, the whole world was amazed and followed after the beast. They worshipped the dragon because he gave his authority to the beast, right? And they worshipped the beast, saying, who is like the beast and who is able to wage war with him? So he's going to be waging war, right? So we can't miss these details. So if there's great unity, why does he have to wage war? So it's not going to be real, you understand? It's forced. But we have this first period when it's a fake peace and everything seems really good. But then when the Antichrist is finally revealed, it says the abomination that causes desolation, and there will be nothing but warfare. Okay, now his mouth, I think we know, is Babylon, but it's the media. The media is the mouth of the Antichrist. The current media has taken such a sharp turn in the last 10 years that it is phenomenal. Phenomenal. It has gone from telling the news with a bit of spin on it to absolutely making up the news, to clear propaganda. And it isn't just here, it's everywhere. And I'm not doing this because this isn't a political message. I'm really telling you, this is the mouthpiece. And if Christians don't learn to understand this, if they don't get this, they're going to be affected by what the media says. They're going to believe the mouthpiece coming from the beast. Let's put it that way. Okay? And that's really terrible. But if Christians don't wake up to these truths, they are going to be falling right headlong into it. The propaganda is the greatest weapon of war. Well, I won't say it's the greatest, but it's a great weapon of war. Let's put it that way. If you can convince people and tell them often enough to lie, they believe it. Right? That was Hitler's mentality, and it worked. Keep telling people. And so the media will do that job very well. They're doing it because they're in alignment with this system. They're in alignment with the New World Order. You know that, don't you? Yes. The media wants a New World Order. Amen. And anyone that doesn't go with that, who's not a globalist, they will destroy them. Okay. The second thing is the religious system, the harlot system, which we've talked about already. I'm going to go into in more detail. I'll show you in Revelation 17. The financial system is part of this because it's about the whole mark of the beast has the financial component to it, doesn't it? So who better to pull that off than the bankers, the global financiers, the bankers, particularly the central banks. And you watch the central banks' relationship with government. Have anybody watched that over the years? It just never goes away. They are in the middle of it all, always behind the scenes pulling the strings. All right. Oh, yeah. Sorry. I had that. Now, I'm not attacking anybody here. I'm just telling you this is what's happening. And I pick on them because they're global and everybody has it. And you go in the supermarket, or well, maybe not the supermarket, but you go in the airport, or wherever you go, CNN is blaring out what CNN wants you to believe. And people, I hate to say it, but there's been so much brainwashing already that people don't even notice anymore. They don't even notice. Is that true or false? Well, CNN said it must be true. That's really where people are at. And if you keep brainwashing people, they will begin to toe the line and follow. Now, see, my generation went through a lot of stuff. Not me, but the one before me. And so we were kind of clued into this stuff, not to just accept whatever they say, to screen it and look at it, find out if it's really true or not. But things have radically changed. People today believe everything the media says. Young people especially, and I'm not picking on young people, don't get me wrong, but that is a tendency. Wouldn't you agree? Okay, all right. So propaganda. Propaganda is a big factor. So now that you see how that all fits with eschatology, how that fits with this teaching, right? This is not just something happening off on the side. It's part of it. It's conditioning for what's coming. It doesn't matter what the network is called, they're all in cahoots. Are you there? You're there. All right, let's go on. How are we doing? We're okay. We have a few minutes. We have about 25 minutes. All right. Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and spoke with me. This is Revelation 17. Saying, "Come here, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth committed acts of immorality, and those who dwell on the earth were made drunk with the wine of her immorality. And he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, full of blasphemous names, having seven heads and 10 horns." So now we got a little bit more detail here. The woman is sitting on this beast. We know what the beast is. We know who the beast is. It's the revived Roman Empire. We know what the 10 horns are, right? So we now have to come and find out what the 7 heads are. And we've alluded to it already, but we're going to make it clearer. So the woman was clothed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls. Where are all the precious stones and pearls? Having in her hand a cup. This is kind of obvious, won't you think? A gold cup, full of abominations, and of the unclean things of our immorality. Now, first of all, I guess I want to read it first and then comment, so maybe I'll just do that. And on her forehead a name was written, a mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the witnesses of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered greatly. And the angel said to me, why do you wonder? So it's like, that's always amazed me. It's like the angel is saying, hello, you should know. You should know who this is. See? Immediately we see there's a connection to the church, don't we? And also the city of Rome, because John knew the city of Rome, but didn't know, obviously, about the church being in the Roman church and where that was going to go, right? But Rome is the city. He should know, right? But what mystified him was the woman sitting on the beast. I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. Are you there? He's going to tell us. Okay. The woman, first of all, is identified as a harlot. The language is clearly spiritual. A harlotry is used throughout the Bible as spiritual language of adultery, spiritual adultery. The implication is somebody that's supposed to know God that doesn't. Now, it could be stretched to say the city is just living in immorality and all that. True, that could be said. But I think the whole symbolic language here tells us there's more to it. All right? And, of course, on the facts on the ground tell us there's way more to it. Don't they? Yes. So you have to put the two together, what we see in Scripture and what we see in the city of Rome. Now, the beast she sits on is the political system. The harlot is a religious system riding on a political system. Okay? See that? The harlot is identified mystically as Babylon, but literally as the city of Rome. And we see that here. Verse 18 of chapter 17 says, the woman whom you saw is, not is like, but is, the great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. And at the time of the writing of Revelation, that was only one place that qualified, and that was Rome. Okay? Babylon did not exist. The place where, Nebuchadnezzar had his kingdom. Babylon did not exist. It was ruins. So this is Rome. But it's mystically called Babylon because of the evil, the whole system, the statue, the beast, the whole thing, right? Also, Rome seems like Peter referred to Rome as Babylon. He used it kind of mystically. And then he said the same thing about Jerusalem. He used a mystical expression, right? So they did that. And he referred to Rome as mystically as Babylon. And his readers understood what he was talking about. It wasn't Babylon out in Iraq, but it was the city of Rome. Okay? Well, why do I say that? Because there's a whole bunch of folks who say that Babylon has to be rebuilt and we have to have all this stuff happen. No.
Or it's America.
Yeah, or it's America. Babylon's very good, thank you. There's a whole book out on how America is Babylon. It's not. This is Rome. And it tells us, verse 18 cannot be denied. It's right there in black and white. Okay, now, Babylon is also the mother of harlots. Babylon happens to be the source of all pagan religion. The Tower of Babel, it goes back to that. Nimrod, the first cult was worshiping Nimrod, the sun god, and the mother, what was her name? Yeah, Semiramis, I think, was the son. Yeah, what was the mother's name? No, that's the Egyptian version of it. It went out into all different cultures, and the names were changed. But it's the same idea. The sun god, and Baal was the same thing, or Baal, as we say. And but the mother and the son god, and gives birth to this god who was the baby. So that's in all these pagan cultures, and it comes from Babylon. All right? Now, you can argue with that if you want. You can be offended with that if you want, but it's true. There's no getting around that. It's like, if you're a Catholic, you get very offended. Well, if you hang in there, you'll see that I'm not just talking about the Catholics. I'm talking about all the churches. But now it's not such a big deal anymore because guess what? There are a whole lot of Catholics who are rising up and saying the same thing. So I'm not alone. I have Catholics saying what I say. And they haven't left the Catholic Church. Not saying they shouldn't. They should. You go on to verse 18, chapter 18, says, come out of her. Yes. Right? But I'm just telling you that this is not just some Protestant, crazy Protestant saying this. This is Catholic so-called theologians and people in the Catholic media that are saying all these things. So it's real. They're saying it because they see it. Right? The Pope will head a new world religion. He will bring all the harlots together. Harlotry has to do with religion. There's no other way to express it. It's people who should know better. And it's led by someone who claims to be the vicar of Christ. What could be more fitting, right? Now, another thing is the Roman system is a mixture of paganism and Christianity. That doesn't take a lot of scholarship. But of course, if you haven't studied it, it can be like crazy. But now, I'm not saying there isn't some validity to what they do. There is. I was a Roman Catholic. I am qualified to say this. I grew up in a Roman Catholic church. I believed it. I understand what they teach. So I'm qualified to speak this. But nobody ever told me why they had this sundial. And why the sun and why the wafer was like the sun and why they put it in here and why there was a crescent moon in the middle of it. Nobody ever told me that. But I know now because it's the Baal Hadad, the sun, the inside the moon. It's the G principle, that whole thing. I know that now, but I didn't know that then. I thought as a kid, this is weird. Why are you lifting that up and throwing incense to it? I used to love the smell of the incense, so that was cool when I was a kid. Like, wow, this is cool. But I always wonder, you take this thing out, and when everybody's kind of worshiping it, and it has the Eucharist in it, and it's a little round sun-like thing, disc-like thing, right? Is that just coincidental? Come on, you know better than that. Nothing's coincidental. Nothing like that anyway. So there we go. There it is. You see the crescent moon in it, right? Did you know this stuff? Some of you did because you've heard me teach it before. There we have the whole mother thing. And look, Islam is the same deal. The crescent moon, the sun inside the crescent moon. It's all about fertility and all that. Right? Okay, enough of that? We have to visit it, guys. This is the reality. If you don't see it, it's happening before your eyes. I can't make it any clearer. But the messages coming out of the Vatican are beyond belief. They are so human. He's calling for a new humanism. That's the latest. New humanism, right? The video is just blow your mind. So I think that it's either this person or the person who replaces him who will turn out to be the false prophet. And there will be an occultic revival. They will have power to do things. Just like Janus and Jambres did things. They're going to do things. Are you there? All right. But God's people will do things too. Amen? God's people win. All right. So why am I giving you these two? Well, look at this is the Roman Colosseum built with the money from the temple in Jerusalem. From plundering God's house, plundering God's city, which God told them to do, allowed them to do. Let's put it that way. Because of his pouring out his wrath on the people. But they, of course, did evil, right? And they took that money and they went and they built the Colosseum and they built the Arch of Titus and all that. And they actually slaughtered so many people in that Colosseum, so many Christians and so many people, it's beyond belief. It just literally flowed with blood. They had channels for the blood to just go out. And sand to soak it up. Right? And that culture of watching that has, we're not killing people today, but that same entertainment culture is here. Okay, that's just a side issue. Right? But can you imagine that many thousands of people going in and watching people being eaten by lions and being slaughtered, and they're cheering and shouting, and that's really... This is this sophisticated Roman culture. All right. But here's the point, and the reason I put that up for you. It says, come here and I will show you the judgment of the great harlot. Right? So it's judgment that's coming. And the whole of chapter 18 is about the judgment. And again, if you study it and read what it says, it totally fits. Because no place has more wealth than in Rome, in the Vatican. The wealth there is beyond belief of the items there. They're without value. Some of the items in the Vatican. They're beyond anything we can think of in terms of their worth. And you can see the merchants crying, can't you? Anyway, we'll get to that. By the way, you should read Revelation 13 and 17 if you haven't done that already. Do it for next time. All right. So the Roman Empire reborn is the beast. The religious system is the Vatican, which is going to head up a world religion of all the different parties, including Christians. Right? And out of that is going to come a remnant of people that love Jesus, and they're going to come from all the different places. Amen. And it's already happening. Amen? Okay, so the beast from the earth is the religious system. The beast that comes up out of the Mediterranean is the political system. Let's see. Both are drunk with the blood of the saints. Say, how is that? Well, Rome destroyed the Jewish people. Rome murdered so many Christians, right? You say, well, what about the Vatican? Well, do your history. Do you know how many people the Vatican slaughtered? Do you know how many people the Pope slaughtered? Do you know how many Jews were slaughtered? Do you know how many people suffered under what we call Christendom? By the way, Christendom is a replacement theology term. You shouldn't use it. Christendom. That means, no, there's no Christendom. We're the church. Amen? Christendom is like dominion, take over, kingdom now stuff. Anyway, so what's going to happen to Rome? There's going to be a great judgment. Because I've got 10 minutes according to my clock. So can you hang in there for 10 more minutes? I see some eyes getting heavy. Bless you guys, but in the name of Jesus, get fresh again. Babylon was abandoned in ruins, right? Persepolis was burned by the Greeks. That was the capital of Persia, right? Alexander the Great didn't have a capital. He wanted to make Babylon his capital, but he didn't live long enough. The capital of the Seleucids, what became the Greek Empire, was known as the Greek Empire, the king of the north, that was burned to the ground. The only place that wasn't dealt with was Rome. Rome continued under the religious system, the Holy Roman Empire, and is still connected. Right? Now, the EU isn't headquartered in Rome, and I think that's very interesting, but it began there. The Treaty of Rome, they say, was one of the key treaties that launched it into what it is today. All right, and perhaps we don't know how that's going to change, but anyway, the religious system is there, and that's the one spoken of. The city of Rome is going to get a particular special judgment from God. You can absolutely take that to the bank. You think that Jesus is going to let that stay during the millennium? All right. It also claims to be the eternal city, in contrast to Jerusalem, which is the eternal city. So it makes a false claim to eternity. That's significant. All right. I think I'm going to stop there. All right? And we'll go on next time. I want to tell you what the 7 heads are. I want to get into that. In fact, I think I might have time to do that. Is that all right with you? Okay. The 7 heads are, there are 7 kings, 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other has not yet come. When he comes, must remain a little while. Okay? Revelation 17:10. We'll talk about the 8th one next week. But anyway, there's a little riddle there, and we'll talk about that next week. But there are 7 kings or kingdoms. 5 of them have fallen, meaning they don't exist anymore. 1 is at the time of the writing. Which one was that? Rome. The other has not yet come. But when it comes, it remains, and it's very clear if you look at the language in the Greek, it's very clear for a little while. It's not going to last very long. To be precise, 3.5 years. So that's why it emphasizes a little while. Right? And then is going to come an 8th, which is actually part of the 7. We'll deal with that next week. That's the prophecy. One of the things we'll deal with. But anyway, what are the 7 heads? There are 7 kingdoms that have, again, overrun Israel, persecuted Israel with the people, the nation, and the land. And that starts with Egypt. Israel came out of Egypt, was persecuted by Egypt, correct? And the Lord delivered them out of Egypt. The second one is Assyria. Assyria took over Israel. Assyria, the northern kingdom was taken obliterated by Assyria, and the southern kingdom was attacked by Assyria, and they paid all kinds of dues to them and everything, right? The next one was Babylon. That's head number 3. Head number 4 was Greece. Head number 5 head number 4 is Medo-Persia. Head number 5 is Greece. And the one that is, at the time of the writing, is Rome. Again, how could it be an Islamic caliphate? No, it existed then. It's Rome, okay? Then the one who will come is the revived Roman Empire, the EU, that lasts for a little while. Right? Amen. We did it. Bless you guys, and we'll see you next time.